Hello beer tubers and welcome to another episode of Throwback Thursday, checking out old school beer and old beers. And this actually smells really good considering how old this is. Guys, we're checking out a really special beer today. I reviewed this beer a little more than 10 years ago now. This specific vintage as well. And now we're trying it again. Very famous beer from the UK. This is none other than Thomas Hardy's Ale. A lot of beer geeks know this one, and this is one of the first times, I lost my shit over barrel-aged beer. I believe it's sherry barrel-aged Thomas Hardy's Ale. I don't think I knew that back in the day, but at least it was when it was brewed at Eldridge and Pope. I'm not sure if O'Hanlon's barrel-aged it too. I think they did. That was the whole ordeal. I mean, it does smell barrel-aged from here. I'm smelling something that reminds me of oak. But Thomas Hardy's Ale is a very interesting beer. It was brewed originally to commemorate Thomas Hardy for his 100th anniversary or something like that. And then they brewed it just for a one-time thing at Eldridge and Pope, and people just kept wanting it back. And they brewed it again, and it became kind of a vintage beer type thing, and it was very popular. But Eldridge and Pope had troubles towards the end of the 90s, and they ended up closing their doors, and then this period disappeared from the market until the O'Hanlons got a hold of it. I think they're just called Hanlon's Brewery now. They still exist. They just don't have the rights to the beer anymore. And it was, the rights were held together with an American import company or something like that. So they brewed it for a few years, from like 2003 to 2008. Then it disappeared again, and now it's back again, where it's brewed, I think it's in Italy, and they've done like different variants too, like cognac variants and whatever. You can get like box sets I've seen with glassware too. So they've changed it up a bit, but this vintage smells like it's held up surprisingly well just from here. So it's a 12-year-old bottle of beer, and these kind of beers can, hold up. They say themselves that it can hold up 25 years in the bottle, at least the O'Hanlon version here. So yeah, this is the 2008 vintage of Thomas Hardy's Ale, celebrating 40 years of this specific beer, because it was brewed for the first time in 1968. And yeah, brewed at O'Hanlon's Brewery, this specific vintage. As I said, the ones that took over making this beer from Eldridge and Pope. I would love to try an Eldridge and Pope bottle. I just wonder if they're still good. Because when, some of these beers get really old, they get really bad. Back in day one, that's old ale, not barley wine. I love these big malty beers, but especially the English ones. But the Prize Old Ale from George Gales, they were so good, but all the bottles I've had as of late have just been like soy sauce. It's just been too, it's off. It's just, it's way past its peak. But I'm hoping this will hold up, because I actually found this in a local bottle shop. They had some bottles, and it was really well priced. It was because, it's a rare vintage beer or whatever. I paid almost 200 crowns for a bottle. So not exactly cheap. That's like $30 for a tiny bottle like this. So I hope it's going to be worth it. But I felt this would be very appropriate for Throwback Thursday, and also because it's the 10th year of the channel. 10 years ago I reviewed this beer, and I went nuts over it. So I thought it would be fun to revisit. It's 11.7%. It's English-style barley wine, and it's aged in sherry casks. And yeah, let's just dive in. So, pouring it out, there was a bit of a fizz cracking the bottle, so there is still a little bit of CO2. You can't really see it here, but there's a little bit. There was a little bit of a head, but it's very bubbly, but it's a beautiful looking beer. Like next to no sediment. All the sediment is in the bottom of the bottle still, but I left a little bit when I poured it out. But it looks, pretty much like what I remember Thomas Hardy, like a really dark ruby red, mahogany kind of color, like really deep and luxurious looking. Slightly clear, there is some sediment floating around, but it is bottle conditioned. It's just because it's been standing for so long, of course, that the sediment completely drops out. And you don't really want to pour that in with such an old beer, because it can give off flavors and whatnot, because it's pretty much dead yeast. So, yeah, low head right now, but what was there was it was just bubbles of like a tan film. But I'm really excited about how it smells from here, so let's dive in and see how this 2008 vintage of Thomas Hardy's Ale is doing right now. Wow, it's still holding up. That is so fucking impressive. What the hell? Wow. I did not expect that. I was so scared cracking this because I had a feeling it's just like, oh man, this is just an expensive bottle of soy sauce. But it smells really nice. It's like big on oaky sherry notes and port wine, Madeira wine, like all these heavy oxidized flavors, but they work really well. It does have a slight off-putting aged note, but it's very light. It's like lightly medicinal, and maybe there is almost like a marmite or something like that. I think that's something also from like dead yeast, like marmite. Some people also say soy saucey thing from yeast autolysis, but it's very like on that it's like mostly like really dark fruity, raisin, figgy, pruny, sherry soaked figs, very caramelly, toffee, creme brulee, tobacco. Oh yeah, really tobacco like pipe tobacco. It smells really good. I'm really surprised how well this smells considering how old it is. Mmm. Jammy too, a little bit of like a jammy dark fruitiness, like almost like forest berry or something like that. And the more I'm smelling it, the more I'm getting all these nice nuances and not annoying oxidized nuances. Or bad oxidized. But oxidation changes over time. It can start with paper and turn into something like this, but it smells good. So, it smells good. Hopefully it's going to taste good. Let's find out. Cheers. Let's check it out. Yes! That is fucking great still. Wow. That is impressive. 12 years in the bottle and it's drinking fabulously. Nice and warm and going down. Really nice dry oaky sherry character. The fun thing, this beer was made before, like this is one of the first, like, I guess, barrel aged extreme beers. Extreme beer and barrel aging beer and all is all the rage now. So many breweries do it. But I guess this is one of the first ones, and probably one that a lot of American brewers were inspired by when they started doing like their barrel aged, also barley wines and imperial stouts and things of that nature. I'm just so happy that it's still holding up. It's crazy. That is nuts. It's like so dark fruity and jammy, raisiny, figgy. There's a slight smoky tone, charry, oaky notes. Super smooth. Just the slightest amount of warmth going down drinking it from the alcohol and probably also the sherry casks. And then like there's like that charry, almost like like the pipe tobacco, but almost like it's been slightly lit, like a charred kind of pipe tobacco thing. It's slightly leathery too. It's really complex too. It'd be so fun to do a blind tasting with this and like a like really hyped barley wine. That'd be so fun. It's really well balanced. It's sweet, but it has a good amount of dryness from the barrel, so it's not cloying. It's aged really, really well. I think 100 might have been a high mark for me back then, or it's the best mark, but I think it might have been a bit too high back then. I probably wouldn't give it 100, now. And also, I've just had beers that I kind of prefer a bit more than this. But I can see, why I was blown away by this back in the day. Never having had really barrel-aged beer or like barley wine that's, like this. And also when I had it, it was already 2 years old, so it's already aged a bit and like mellowed out and smoothed out. But here, 12 years later, this is drinking phenomenally. There we go. But I think it's really hard. You have to look up, like it's hard to find old vintages, and hunting really old vintages and stuff like this can be a bit of a dangerous thing to do because you might end up with just a bottle of really bad old beer that's cost you a fortune. But at one point I had a dream of getting a 1990 bottle to open for my 30th birthday. I never got one, so maybe I should just try and hunt one at a later date. I don't know if any of you guys have like old Tom Hardy beers in stock, or if you have any in your cellar. Maybe do a trade. But it'd be fun to try something from my birth year. I think because in the 90s they was it 93 it stopped being produced, something like that? But while I was drinking phenomenally well, like figgy, it's also like slightly maple syrupy. dates rich in prunes, that like smoky tobacco, dry and sherry notes, port wine, even sweet kind of Madeira, more Madeira wine and sherry than port wine. And then like all these just luxurious flavors, like next to no carbonation, is pretty flat. There's just like the slightest fizz. If you serve this to most people, they'd see it as flat, but you know, it's just got a little bit. You can see a little bit of the carbonation still in the glass too, but I'm really surprised. This is really good. The thing is, we can still get bottles of this, but I'm afraid it might still be a gamble buying them, and at that price point, you want to be a bit careful with what you get, or how many you get, because they're quite expensive. And again, this just, having this though does kind of tell me that they probably aged it quite well. So I'm hoping the other bottles they have are like this. So man, they even also had older ones at one point, like 2005, 2006, stuff like that. If they had 2003, that would be dope, because I think it was the first year O'Hanlon started doing it. But wow, why did O'Hanlon's let this go? This is such a great beer. I know it's probably expensive to brew, but that's a shame. Because now I think it's in Italy. It's brewed now, but yeah, it used to be brewed in Devon and is it Lank? No, where was the? I can't remember where that was. It was Dorchester, something like that. I think that was where the original brewery was. But yeah, really good stuff, guys. If you happen to stumble upon a bottle of Thomas Hardy's Ale from 2008, specifically number T, which is, I think, the European lot. I think Q was the American lot of bottles from this vintage. And this is bottle number 748. But if you stumble on one, I'd say try and just do it. Splurge, get one, and hope that it's good, because this is damn good. Rain-wise, I'm just going to go a little lower than I did back in the day, but 98. I actually think this is pretty damn world-class barley wine. And I'm so surprised at how tasty it is. I think if you gave this to me blind, compared to like some hype barley wine, I would rack this up there. I mean, it's surprising how good it is. It is crazy. Which beer should I compare it to? I mean, the most recent I've had, I think, barrel-aged barley wine. I don't know. I mean, it's even more balanced. Like the Brewery's crazy big old ales, but they're also very strong and boozy. It's just mellowed out and balanced so nicely. It's such a joy to drink. A piece of beer history like this, and it's still tasting this phenomenal. But I think if you gave it a couple more years, it might, depending on how you store it, might get a bit more of that like medicinal and soy saucy thing I talked about. I'm not really tasting it anymore. It was just initially. Maybe it's just because the beer has had time to rest in the glass. But I'm just going to drop it down 2 grades because I don't want to give it 100. But I still think this is a world-class barley wine. And if you've never had Thomas Hardy's Ale, you need to try some. Get yourself a newer vintage if you don't want to splurge, now that it's brewed again in Italy. So yeah, this was fun. This is really fun. Beer history here, and just nostalgic for me. So if you guys had a chance to try Thomas Hardy in recent times, let me know what you thought of it, especially like different vintages. And as always, remember to comment, subscribe to the Facebook fan page, and Twitter, and Instagram. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. And I'm going to say cheers, and see you guys in another Throwback Thursday very soon. Cheers.